Welcome back to the show, everyone. Craig and Jonah. This is part two of we did an episode a while ago. I'll try to remember to link to that. I think it's 164. Christopher West finally on his podcast tried, emphasis on tried to answer my question. Basically, the question that I posed to him is, Mr. West, you've said that the church clearly teaches that basically male orgasm has to finish a certain way, and that other acts are, wrong. And I said, where does the church teach that? And in addition, if the church teaches that, what is the harm in that to the relationship? Aside from the fact that, let's say if we assume it's a sin, aside from the fact that the couple is sinning, what is there any other actual harm to the marriage about that? And so the last episode, he spent a lot of time. I don't remember what he all talked about. He did not talk about the where the church teaches that. He kind of gets to that here shortly. Okay. So you may want to go back and watch that episode first, but we're going to basically continue on and have kind of an organic reaction to what he says. So let's go ahead and.
This is a rupturing act. Right at the moment of the climactic, unitive, and generative power, right at the moment of truth, we say, nah, not going to take that risk, not going to go for that, not going to enter this communion. I do like the pleasure of...
I think he's talking about coitus interruptus. I think he had just gotten done dropping Onan into the discussion, so I think that's what he's talking about.
The sensations in my genitals, so I still want those, but I don't want it according to the design of God. So I alter the design, and I adulterate the act. I commit an act in the literal sense of the word of adultery by altering the act. What is the damage here? It was interesting the way Craig phrased this. He said, besides sin, what's the damage here? There's nothing besides... sin is damaging.
So, and that comes, if it is sinful, it would cause damage, right?
Yeah, I mean, you would.
So where does that manifest itself?
Yeah, I mean, I get.
Like, that was your question.
Yeah, I get the struggle he's having, and I struggle with how to phrase it because I didn't want to just gloss over whether something's a sin or not, and whether that's a good thing or not. But, in my experience, if usually rules that we have, in addition to being, let's say, what the church tells us or the scripture tells us, there tends to be some real world practical consequences to that makes sense. Like, for example, I think I did this on an episode on my own. The church says adultery is wrong. I should not be going out and having affairs. I know that's wrong. I know what the Ten Commandments say, but I also know that even if the church didn't say that, there's very good practical reasons why that's a bad idea. My spouse would be hurt by that. I could bring a disease home. I could foster, I could conceive a child out of wedlock. Like, all kinds of bad things could happen. Hurtful things could happen to me, to my marriage, to this other person, whatever.
That's true. And you see that with basically every sin.
I think most sins carry that. Not fornicating. There's a good reason why we should, if possible, limit sex to marriage. We're in a committed relationship and not just be casually having sex with a lot of people. I think the real world experience validates the church's teaching on that. And my simple question is there a similar corollary to this other than his belief that these acts are sinful? But poor Christopher's old heart just couldn't handle my question, so we'll let him continue.
Sin is sin because it is utterly contrary to our being. And when we act in a way contrary to our being, it damages us. If it wasn't damaging, it wouldn't be sin.
That's what that was your question,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and so he gets it.
Yeah, but it's a circular argument.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like if you wait long enough and you have a nocturnal emission,
yeah.
how does that, I mean, I know that's not sinful, but like,
Mm-hmm.
I guess in the past, some of the church fathers thought that it might be.
Well, I was on a guy's podcast recently, and we're actually going to interview him. He's in an irregular marriage, at least in his. We're going to ask him about that, but he basically can't have sex at all with the woman he's legally married to. He said, "I have," and he's like, "He's in his 50s. I have wet dreams all the time," and he regularly confesses because he's like, "Well, it probably happens because I spend too much time allowing impure thoughts into my mind during the day." And I mean, I'm not saying that.
I
don't know.
I don't know. I would kind of doubt that.
But the guy's very hard on himself, so there are the
and that's a painful way to live. Like, is that really how God wants you to live? Because I feel like it's not, and this is, speculative or whatever, but it seems difficult to be attractive. I think that like Christianity is like an attractive sort of way to live. Whereas if you're constantly whipping yourself, like you're just not going to attract many people to that sort of lifestyle.
Yeah.
If it wasn't sin, it wouldn't be damaging.
I mean, I get what he's saying, kind of, but at the same time, it's just like he's using the fact that in his opinion it's sinful, therefore it must be harmful, and that because it must be harmful, we should make it sinful. Like it just, I acknowledge what the church teaches on certain things. I'm simply asking.
We're just asking to show the work,
Yeah, and I simply want to know, because for people that are struggling, like, even if the church said didn't come out and say adultery is wrong, I would not just automatically go out and have an affair because of these
for sure.
right? But this thing, like, for people that struggle with whether it's solo or other types of activity, if there was a clear harm that could be recognized, other than, I mean, the fact that it's sinful doesn't stop people. Like, we go to confession all the time, but if there was something more, they'd be like, oh, okay, now I can see how this could have some long-term consequences, bad consequences to me or to my relationship, would be helpful.
Well, and the fact that he equated it with adultery is kind of like silly too, because if I went to confession then and said, well, my wife and I committed adultery, that sounds like something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the same thing. And I would hope that, I don't know, like, do you want sin to be considered in black and white terms in the end? Like, is that, or I mean, that's just a difficult way to look at your judgment. Like,
I mean, I'm torn about that, because to this extent, going back to Father Longenecker's interview, I think the thing he appreciate, having come from an Anglican background where kind of everything was a free for all, and you could sort of see the slippery slope playing out in real life. He appreciated the pastoral clarity that having kind of black and white rules provides, and I am sympathetic to that to some degree. Like, I do worry about the slippery slope, but at the same time, the black and white hard edges can be very difficult in real experience, and not always obvious why in this particular experience I can't do this or I have to do this.
And that's where 2352 is the gray area, but it's not really explained well.
It would be nice to have some further explanations there.
That's really all that needs to happen. It's just some clarification on 2352.
Bishops, just link to our podcast in the footnote to 2352,
because you can't really ignore it, because it's so common. Like, it's silly to ignore it.
Yep.
Why is sin so grievous? Because it damages us. And we might say, well, I don't feel damaged. It's because we've numbed ourselves to our pain. We have numbed ourselves to our pain.
I don't know what to say to that. I mean, it's just sure it's possible.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. I'm
just so numb that you can't tell. But
yeah, it's possible. 80% of men are just numb to the
80%. I mean, I don't know. I would, and I wish that he would open up about his sex life. Like I would like to know his stats. Because I mean, you just want to know if he can really do this. Like if he can really live this out.
I would love to get that guy on here and just have a frank
with a polygraph.
Yeah.
Oh, needle's a little jumpy,
Yeah. we got a priest on standby.
Yeah.
World that sells us a counterfeit version of love at the very same time must sell us all manner of numbing agents to keep us from recognizing the pain we are in. In order to get down.
You know what takes a numbing agent? Having prolonged complete lack of intimacy with your spouse.
It's true. I was thinking the same thing.
Ice packs and I don't know.
And that's where like marriage itself can feel like something that, like if we were just suffering, sometimes. I mean, and if you're in a marriage where you have no suffering, that's awesome. But I think for most people at some point or another, there is real suffering that occurs, not only within the marriage, but then also it all involves frequent intimacy. So,
and I think the really important point to make here then is this: if, as he says, there's some harm or damage, and maybe we're not aware of it, it's subtle enough we're not aware of it. Okay, let's just assume there's some subtle harm to ourselves by doing these things that are quote unquote illicit. Are we allowed to at least put that on a scale and compare that to the harm that goes to marriages?
Oh, that's a fair question.
I mean, you never talk about that. They never have to talk about that.
Well, because nobody really talks about that. Like that is not something people talk about.
I think it's this suffering over on this other side is very common and very, very painful.
Yeah.
And you want to be realistic. You want to be realistic. People over here are the people that are turning to porn and masturbation and other bad things. Not saying it's right, but it's clearly foreseeable.
Mm-hmm.
All kinds of harmful things that could happen. You're fighting more.
Yeah, things spiral out of control.
Don't we get to at least? I'd like to see a scale. Show me the harm on this side of the scale because I can see what the harm is on this side of the scale.
Mm-hmm.
Help me understand that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an open-minded person. Let me see the data.
Perhaps too open-minded.
Yeah.
Too much of a thinker.
Darn heretic.
Okay. Don't you go thinking on me.
Yeah. Do what we say and trust us, right?
Yeah.
To the truth of this, we have to have the courage to remove our numbing agents so we can begin to feel the pain we are in so that we can allow that pain to instruct us.
So was it sinful then in the Middle Ages for people to have sex during Advent or Lent? Like, was that really a sinful act? Because they've obviously changed that since then. So, I mean, were those people still sinning at that time? And was there, like, when he talks about the damage done, was there a real damage done at that time? Like, I mean, it seems like that same kind of logic could be applied to these acts too, potentially, where, like, I kind of doubt that the people at that time were overtly sinning, by engaging in intimacy during Lent. I don't know.
People are dying of the plague and everything. Like that was the glimpse of hope you had in life.
Yeah, you spend all day working for some guy that you don't get paid.
Christmas.
Some poor peasant family. Yeah.
As if you weren't suffering enough. Guess what? You got to wait. Wait for Pentecost and
500 or 1,000 years later you can just do it during Lent. What's that? Like that seems pretty, like you'd be kind of upset about that, I think, if you knew about it, maybe.
Yeah, I'm imagining that news didn't travel fast back then, so how they say the people that die after the peace treaty's been called but because the news doesn't get to the front lines yet. Like I would just, what about the couple that's out there and they're I don't know.
You've been having sex during Lent the whole time?
Yeah. 3 years ago, the Pony Express just got here. Oh man, I would be pissed.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's good to live rural. I don't know.
That's why you need Twitter for stuff like that.
Get the word out there.
Instantaneous. This stuff I want to know right away.
Yeah.
All of that said, I also have to throw this into the mix. Chastity does not demand, when a couple needs to abstain, that they never kiss one another, that they never touch one.
Oh, that makes it all better.
Oh, that makes it so much worse. Oh, gosh. There's nobody that really wants to kiss their wife during this extended period of abstinence. I mean, like, I'm not saying you don't want to, but like, there's a certain amount you're holding back.
Is this guy real? Is his wife real? Is this all just a
charade?
I don't know.
Like when they talk, like you can play it because I think he says a little more.
One another, that they never hold one another, that they never caress one another. It does demand that we never pursue sexual climax apart from the full embrace of Holy Communion.
The issue with that is that if it's been a long time and just you like give your wife a back massage or whatever, like it's going to lead to problems that'll make you go to confession. I mean, it's just like, it's an unstoppable force of nature. I mean, I don't know, unless maybe, I don't know, maybe he takes, I don't know how he could possibly fight those urges. Like,
do you like rodeo?
Yeah.
Bull riding?
Yeah.
I think, they load the bull into the chute there.
Okay.
I don't think that,
who's the bull? Christopher Western. I got to figure out what's going on here.
There's lots of layers of analogy here. Okay. I'm going to come back to the bull riding analogy many times in this show, but you put the bull into the chute. That bull is only getting out one way, whether there's a rider on it or not. Yep. You're not getting that bull to go back.
It's true.
I don't even think they try.
No, you can't back it out. If there was a way to back it out, though, then all of this makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it does.
Mm-hmm. But I don't think there is. There's no reversal pill.
Like, if there was a way to cause nocturnal emissions, would you do it? Like, I mean, so if you could take a pill, I agree with that too.
Yeah, if I could wake up tomorrow with the day one feeling.
Yep, every day.
I mean, I would still want intimacy with my wife, but if I could, absolutely. Like, this is huge.
So we need scientific research into how to have nocturnal emissions, maybe, to save the Catholic sort of teaching on this, because I don't know how else. Like, that's the only way out.
I bet you ask. I bet you ask 100 Catholic men who struggle with masturbation and stuff like that. If given the option to have the release, even without the awareness of the pleasure, all that, I think they would all take that, because it's not just about the pleasure. I think that's a teenage boy thing. I think for those of us that are married and have kids and life and responsibilities, we just want some release. And
it just builds up over time. Yep. So if there was a way to do it, I would totally do it. Yep. If there's a supplement. So I've got bad news for everybody. A quick Google search revealed that there is no such way.
Man, you had my hope up there.
For a minute, I mean, it does say that in European folklore, nocturnal emissions were believed to be caused by a succubus copulating with the individual at night. So I think that's part of where people get, scrupulous about it. Like that guy that you're interviewing.
Well, I got to figure out how to transport myself into people's dreams and flip the switch inside your brain.
Yeah, I mean, or maybe you could listen to something. I don't know. Like, would that be licit? Like, if you could put on like headphones and just have it happen while you slept.
See, we need to figure out how to hypnotize people so that when they, I don't want to get too gross here. They read it. They just read the newspaper before they go to bed. It sets it off. So we're not reading any erotica.
That's true. Your wife could snap her fingers or something.
Yeah.
And you just fall asleep. And
yes. There you go.
No, that would be awesome.
Every time you're in the act itself, Someone snaps your wife snaps her finger, and then she just trains your brain. So when you're sleeping, she goes over your head and she snaps her finger and it goes off.
It just happens. Yeah. I mean, that's a real practical solution here, I think. Like more so than a lot of the stuff that goes on.
I think that sneaks around all the rules.
Because like people really struggle with this more so than Christopher West would ever admit. Like that guy on Catholic Answers forums like 10 years ago, Robert Sock, talked about how he would take antidepressants to, you know, make sure that he like numbed his ejaculatory nerves so he never had any interest in it. And I mean, we would love to talk to that guy because I want to know what he's doing or how he's doing. And if that, he would recommend it to everybody. And I obviously don't recommend that at all. But if we could have some kind of hypnosis or some kind of pill or something you listen to where it would just happen at night while you slept, like that's the only licit way out of this. But then the question is, would people allow that? You know, like what would Christopher West say about that?
I think wives would be buying subscriptions for all their husbands. No one would have kids anymore.
Yeah, it's the blue pill you take, like the purple pill.
I would throw my money at anyone that had a licit way of producing day one experience all the time.
Yeah, I mean,
you show me I'm wrong. You guys comment. You tell us there's no such thing as a guy out there that would take that deal.
Totally, without a doubt. Like you're right, because it doesn't reduce, you know, your desire to be intimate with your wife necessarily. Like, I mean, if it happened every night, maybe it would lessen it, but like. Maybe that'd be fine too. I don't know.
We're supposed to suffer.
Would that be avoiding suffering if you had nocturnal emission every night?
So we're mixing episodes up here, but the last episode we were talking about this psychotherapist who was talking about cures for masturbation.
Mm-hmm.
And he had this one last, I don't know if it was a mistake he says people made or a point, but he said, I think it was a mistake. And he kind of had this, he kind of like built up to it. He's like saved it for last. He's like, the last mistake that people make is they don't see the struggle as a gift.
Oh,
sure. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess if that's all you got, there's merit in suffering. I'm not totally unsympathetic to that. And if that's, I just struggle with the notion that God wants to keep us humble with something that we also say is a mortal sin. Like that's the part of my brain that
where it's so risky.
Like what, you know, keep me humble with a pain in my big toe or whatever. That
be careful what you ask for.
Yeah. Weirdest stigmata ever. Anyway,
all right, I'll get back to Christopher West.
Hopefully we're almost done with him.
Right, but all of the touches, caresses, kisses of a husband and a wife are holy and good in themselves.
It's initiating the launch sequence,
so long as we're not pursuing a mockery of the marital act. And a mockery of the marital act would be the pursuit of climax apart from the full embrace of communion.
What happens if I massage my wife? After like 14 days, especially. Like, I mean, what are you going to do?
He can't be that insulated from reality that he doesn't see that. I don't know. I would like to get inside that guy's honest brain.
Yeah.
See what he actually believes, but
I agree.
Whenever we engage our generative power, but then thwart it, right? Whenever we go the whole way, and the church here would talk about a completed act. And by completed act, the church means an act of sexual climax. The only context for a completed act is a completed act of intercourse.
Sorry, ladies that want to have female orgasm outside of intercourse. Christopher West answered that for you. Huh? Sorry.
If we complete the generative power through climax, but we do so in a way that generation is impossible, as in an act of masturbation,
or nocturnal emission. Like, I mean, like, is it thwarting? Our nocturnal emission thwarting anything? I mean, because it's the same basic biological function.
Okay, so what does he mean by impossible? Tell me, what does impossible mean, and what do we do with the...
especially in a faith that believes in miracles.
Yeah. What do we do with a 60% success rate for coitus interruptus?
Yeah. I mean, it's not impossible.
Far from it.
Yeah.
Well, that's what it is. It's an act of masturbation. When a husband and a wife stimulate each other to sexual climax, apart intentionally and apart from the marital embrace, the proper classification, or the technical word here would be the proper species of the act. What's its proper name? Masturbation.
So then it falls under 23.
I know.
I mean,
there you go.
Lessons, culpability. Like, why don't they talk about that? Like, I mean, really though, like, because that is valuable information.
The most important section of the catechism is 2352. You heard it here first. Well, I mean, the Trinity is pretty important.
Yeah. There's a lot of important stuff in there, but like, as far as your day-to-day living, if you're married, that's a pretty important section.
Yeah, you're good.
You want to highlight that, but it's true. So he said it right there. So
here, let's do it again.
To some degree, we're going to replay that and remix it.
To sexual climax, apart intentionally and apart from the marital embrace. The proper classification, or the technical word here would be the proper species of the act. What's its proper name? Masturbation. Mutual masturbation.
Like, I mean,
you heard it here.
I wish you would address that. Have you written to him and asked if he could address that? Because he clearly says masturbation, so then it must fall under those guidelines.
Well, remind me. This is what I do with my wife all the time. I said, remind me to do this because I'll forget. So
I can't
remind me. I'll send
something like this.
I'll send another email to Christopher West and ask him then if, based on his comments, if 2352 applies to mutual other acts between spouses.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Seems fair. It's a fair question, without a doubt.
Yeah. He'll wiggle
There's
out of it. There's
no way he'll answer that.
He'll find a way to wiggle out of it.
There's no way he can't wiggle out of that. Like, he just won't answer it.
That is, stimulating the genitals to climax apart from the true gift of self in the marital embrace is always wrong. Is always wrong. And it's damaging to us because it's contrary to the call to love as God loves. It's
okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Like
failure in the call to love as God loves. I'm being kind of technical in my verbiage here to just offer clarity. That clarity is very important, but also I want you to hear pastoral sensitivity, brother, in my answer as well, which is this.
I don't hear that.
I get it, brother. I get it. Abstinence is not easy. Sexual climax is very pleasurable and desirable.
It isn't as much about the pleasure.
Talk about day one at PMAS, buddy.
That's where, I think he's wrong. It isn't exactly about pleasure. It's not. I don't know why. And maybe that's because that's what we're trained, is that naughty, it's all about pleasure. But no, it's not. There is a certain pinching that goes on that you just want to get away from. And then on top of that, if you do things with your wife, it provides closeness, intimacy, connection, everything that makes a marriage thrive.
I've used this analogy before, and I apologize if it's not a good spot for it, but it
different from bull riding.
It's different from bull riding, but I always come back to this analogy in these kinds of situations. But I remember a time when there was someone that we knew took his own life, and he had struggled with all kinds of mental health issues for a long time, left a family, and I remember at the funeral. I think the bishop actually did the funeral, but the funeral
no kidding,
they addressed that issue, and he's like, "Look, because historically you couldn't be buried in the cemetery, cemetery, right? It's a mortal sin. You obviously didn't have a chance to confess it. All that the black letter law says we know what's going on, what happened to this person." And the bishop said, "Look, someone that's in that situation, it's like they're in the top of a burning building."
Mm-hmm. Like the 9/11 folks.
Kind of like the 9/11 folks. And they jump out knowing in the back of their mind what that means, but their purpose is not to jump out and harm themselves. Their immediate purpose is to get away from the flames, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me that isn't just a perfect analogy.
It is. It actually is a perfect analogy, because you're right. In most circumstances, nobody wants to do that.
Yep.
They want their their spouse,
Yep.
you know?
Yep.
And
Yep.
it's just the only, you're right, that is the perfect analogy.
Yep. So I would love to see him or any of these other people that talk about it just acknowledge that reality.
Mm-hmm.
I think 2352 kind of allows
it totally allows that, I think, but they don't accept it like that. Like they preach it like it's not even there.
Yeah, no one mentions it. It never gets talked about other than here on this channel.
Yep.
I want to be close to my wife. I want to invite you to a closeness with your wife that doesn't involve sexual climax. And that might seem right now an impossibility.
The roommate
I'm
situation.
Speaking from experience here. It is possible to grow in being master of my sexual responses.
Master your domain. He watches Seinfeld. You know he wanted to say it. Like, you know he wanted to say it.
That's right.
And that mastery itself is a difficult journey. But it's the journey that enables us to be a true gift, a real gift to the other person. If we are not master of our sexual responses and they are masters of us, then we're not free to be a gift. We're not loving in the image of God.
I don't know what to say.
None of that means anything.
I mean,
sorry. Like, that's just not to.
I don't see how engaging in other acts takes away from your being a gift or like your ability to help your spouse or whatever. Like, I just don't see what he's saying there. As far as being reality, it's flowery language and it sounds great.
Yeah. Yeah. But
it's like a paper tiger.
I just don't think that lines up with reality at all for most people or anybody. I don't know, maybe Christopher and his wife, but
all that the church teaches is a call to be faithful to those words of Jesus. Love one another as I have loved you.
I don't think it's what Jesus means.
And let me just throw in,
like, you know, I think he's talking about loving your neighbor as yourself and loving other people. I don't think that really applies to sex. Like, I don't know why he would say that.
I don't know.
Again, for clarity in regard to your question, where does the church teach this?
Finally, I've been waiting so long. I was listening to this podcast like, finally, I'm gonna find out where it's at.
Here we go.
The suspense is killing me.
About the climax.
Yes, everybody get ready. Get ready.
Church teaches this in everything she teaches about the inseparability of the unitive and procreative meanings of the marital act. Humanae Vitae, it's in the catechism. It's in the whole tradition.
Wait, what?
It's not in the catechism.
We missed it. Let's go back and do it. Let's try. We must have missed it. Let's give them.
For clarity in regard to your question, where does the church teach this? The church teaches this in everything she teaches about the inseparability of the unitive and procreative meanings of the marital act. Humanae Vitae, it's in the catechism. It's in the whole tradition of the church.
That's good.
Is it really in the catechism or Humanae Vitae?
I think what he means is where the church says the unitive and procreative ends can't be separated.
Okay,
that's in there, but we've already talked about that. 2352 is a very specific section of the catechism that talks about masturbation, and with all due respect to him, I don't think it clearly states that it applies to, let's say, other acts.
Although
I think it's
masturbation.
I think it should, but there is nothing resembling that kind of specificity about, let's say, other acts in the catechism. I mean, he's wrong about that. Like that, I don't think he's trying to be dishonest, but that's just not correct. That's not correct. It's his interpretation of that, and he could be right, but I'm just saying there's nothing clearly spelled out one way or another.
I just wanted to say something, just take a little bit different angle for Craig and his wife, as it seems implied in the question that they may be experiencing a need to have a longer time of abstinence in their marriage. And we do speak from experience of having gone through something similar. And I just want to kind of turn your question around a little bit and give you a question to think about. Craig, you asked, what harm could this cause?
Well, maybe the voice of reason can give us some explanation. Let's see what Wendy. I think
Wendy seems more realistic. I think for the most part.
Let's see what Wendy has to say.
if we can't engage in intercourse for an extended period of time. I just want to ask you.
Can I just clarify? He's saying, what harm would it cause if we pursued sexual climax during the time that we're not enabled to when we're not able to have the full embrace?
Mm-hmm. What I want to ask you is this: what incredible graces could come to your marriage from embracing something difficult together?
Preach it, Wendy. Preach it, Wendy.
And I don't mean that in some kind of fake way. In our experience, our extended time of abstinence was so fruitful
for her,
so grace-filled. The insights that each of us gained in understanding one another, and
I'm not going to, I mean, you get the idea, and it pretty much wraps up after that. But the other day I was listening to a podcast about someone that talked about they had lost a child at an early age, like a 2-year-old. They didn't say what happened, but they lost a young child, and he raised a statistic, which I think I've heard before, like 80% of marriages where they lose a young child ends in divorce.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that'd be terrible.
Like, I can totally imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine that there's some fraction of the 20% that say this, as horrible as it was, brought our marriage together. Like, there was we had to rely on each other. We grew, we talked, like we hurt, like
grieved together.
I totally get that.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't
I can see
mean
it both ways.
That does not mean that, well, that makes that a good thing or something we should want for people. That's the problem. Yes, there can be merit in suffering. People can grow together during times of hardship. That doesn't mean that the hardship should be encouraged or not avoided. That's the problem here.
Yeah, marriage is difficult, and
you don't welcome that into your life. You face it when it happens, but it's one thing to embrace the suffering when it happens. It's a whole nother thing to essentially inflict it upon yourself.
Well, and his advice is basically just to suck it up.
Yeah.
And that's I don't know. It's a tough way to live.
I think it's a tough way to live for people that, let's say, can follow Christopher West to a T. God bless you.
Nobody, I mean, who really can?
Well, let's just assume there's someone that can. You are going, God bless you. I don't know how you would do it.
That's incredible.
You have my deepest respect, but for the 90% of people, we know what it involves.
Mm-hmm.
It involves
confession on a weekly basis or whatever.
Yes.
I mean, it's just a constant struggle.
Yes.
Constant tension.
So
lack of connection with your wife. I mean, it's just a struggle.
How is all that better or less harmful than some of these
things that may fall under 2352?
Yeah, that's our only point. And maybe if that is the case, if someone can help us understand that, we have an open invitation to Christopher West or anyone else to come in and enlighten us. We're not trying to be
we'd be respectful to anybody.
Yeah, but I genuinely, I'm telling you, I don't see it. I don't see
just because for all intents and purposes, most guys are just going solo then quietly, and
I think when that happens, that is deeply harmful to the marriage.
Yep, because then it's a secret.
It's a secret.
Then you could get into other activities that are bad, and
dealing with moral guilt. He may resent his wife. I mean, he may resent God. Like I've experienced a lot of that stuff.
Yep. I get it too.
That is, I think if we're going to be realistic and if we at least recognize how common this is going to be, I think you have to take that into account. I don't know how you don't take that into account. This is not just a fringe group of people that are going to fall into. This is going to be the vast majority of people. So anyway.
Yep.
Whew. All right. Well, that was I'll link to Christopher West episode below again. Feel free to check it out. If comment or leave us a message. Hopefully this has been helpful. We let me just say one final thing. I apologize if anything that we said, seems disrespectful or irreverent. We're not trying to be that way. but we are trying to be kind of the normal person's.
Just if we get real simple answers,
Yeah.
you know, and just show us the work and what really is going on here, and just how 2352 can be applied to that, because certainly it's within the realm of possibility.
Yep.
And it's ignored.
Yep, absolutely. So anyway,
and go to confession, trust in God's mercy, pray.
Yep.
That's all you can do, and just to get through all this.
Yep. So, all right. Well, thank you, Jonah.
You bet.
Till next time, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good one.